Hey friends, Elizabeth here from Plant-Based Bride, back again with another video, and today I'm very excited to share with you my September plan with me in my bullet journal with a celestial moth theme. Today's video is kindly sponsored by Skillshare. I'll talk about them more at the end of the video, but for now, let's hop right into the setup. So I'm starting with the quote and cover pages here, and starting first with that quote page. And for this one, I wanted to keep it pretty simple since I was going to be doing something a little more intricate and colorful on the cover page. So for the quote page, I just wanted to create this sort of celestial illustration, very simple, with a combination of black lines and a little bit of gold with the quote stamped underneath. So I'm creating this crescent moon with my gold acrylograph, and I'll go over that with gold watercolor to make it super shiny. And then I created these black radiating lines coming out from it and a twinkling star in the center. The quote I chose was, "Trust the wait, embrace the uncertainty, enjoy the beauty of becoming." I just really loved this quote when I came across it. I thought it was really beautiful and really emblematic of the time that I think a lot of us are in right now. Just the idea of waiting for life to begin again and trying to lean into the uncertainty instead of hiding from it. Just very relatable right now, I think, for a lot of us. Moving over to the cover page, I created a really simple border and then I'm just stamping September along the bottom. And now I'm going in with my Secura Micron to create an outline of this moth drawing. And the nice thing about using microns for this is that they are permanent archival ink pens. So once they're dry, you can watercolor on top of them and you don't run any risk of them bleeding or running or smudging. While I wait for that to dry, I'm just going back over my crescent moon with my gold watercolor to make it extra shiny. As we all know, I do love my shiny things. And then back over to the cover page, I am painting a bunch of different plants, sprigs, and some stars and a little crescent moon around this moth, just because I thought it would be pretty much. So using my gold watercolor and my super duper fine brush, and I'm just painting over the sketch that I did with my pencil. Once all that gold watercolor is dry, I'm going to go in with my paints to add some color to this moth. So I'm using 3 of my designer's gouache paints by Winsor & Newton, and just going in with different amounts of water for whether I want them to be a little lighter, a little more transparent, or less water where I want the areas to be darker or more opaque. In my experience, gouache reacts really similarly to watercolor, so I think you could use either one for this kind of art and have a very similar result. I'm going off of several reference photos of moths to just try to get a good idea of not only what they look like, but what their colors tend to be, and trying to make it look at least semi-realistic while still having a little bit more of an abstract or illustrative quality to it. When the paint was dry, I was ready to move on to my next spreads. So this spread is going to be my monthly calendar on the left side and my habit tracker on the right. But before I start working on those, I just want to cut my tabs for my weeklies. So just cutting these the way I always do for my rolling weeklies with the faux Dutch door. So I'll cut one page with a tab, and then the next page I'll cut just 2 spaces in from the edge, and then the next page will have a tab. The next page I'll just cut straight all the way down, and then repeat that for as many weeklies as I need for this month. Now that I have those spreads cut, I'm flipping back to my calendar and habit tracker. And as I get started here, I wanted to share a couple moth facts with you all. I forgot to include facts last month for my olive theme, and it made me very sad. So I'm back again with facts this month. So the first interesting fact that I found was that moths outnumber butterflies 9 to 1. Apparently, scientists have already discovered well over 135,000 different species of moths. And experts estimate that there are at least 100,000 more moth species that have been yet undiscovered. Another interesting fact about moths is that while most moths are nocturnal, hence this combination in this theme here of the stars and the moon and the moths, there are actually some moth species that are active during the day. They're just often mistaken for butterflies, bees, or even hummingbirds. Another fun fact about moths is that they come in a huge variety of sizes. Some moths are so small they're referred to as micro moths, which is just adorable if you ask me. And that label applies to members of moth species that measure just a centimeter or two. But there was actually a species collected in Africa that is the smallest moth found to date, with a wingspan of just 2 millimeters. On the other end of the size spectrum is the white witch moth, which has a wingspan that reaches up to 28 centimeters. Or in other words, the size of a dinner plate. Now, a lot of these moths I looked up in my research and for reference photos were very cute, but if I saw a moth with a wingspan the size of a dinner plate flying towards me, you bet I'm gonna scream and run and hide. I also really loved this fact. Apparently, male moths have a remarkable sense of smell. Although moths don't have noses, an insect's sense of smell is essentially the ability to detect chemical cues in its environment, called chemoreception. Moths detect these cues with highly sensitive receptors on their antennae. And because male moths have feathery antennae with lots of surface area to grab those molecules from the air, they are, in effect, the champions of chemoreception. Male silk moths seem to have the strongest sense of smell of all and can follow a whiff of female pheromones for miles. Another interesting fact about moths, and one of those things that really makes them striking to look at, is that moths use a lot of different tricks to avoid being eaten. There are some caterpillars that are able to look like twigs, and adult moths that blend in with tree bark. There are also other species of moths that have startle markings, like brightly colored hind wings that they flash to distract pursuing predators. Some moths have markings that look like eyes to make predators think they might be a larger animal. And other species, like tiger moths, produce ultrasonic clicking sounds that confuse sonar-guided bats. And the last fact I wanted to share about moths in this video, which kind of creeped me out, I'm not gonna lie, is that some moths don't have mouths. Because some moths have such a short lifespan where they emerge from their cocoon, ready to mate, and die shortly thereafter, they can get by for their entire lifespan as a moth just on the energy they stored as caterpillars. I guess it makes sense that if you're not gonna eat, you don't need a mouth, but it still kind of creeps me out. The best known example of a mouthless moth is the Luna moth, a stunning species that lives just a few days as an adult. So those are just some interesting moth facts that I found. I hope you enjoyed them. If you did, leave a brown emoji in the comments down below so that I know you want me to prioritize remembering to include facts in my videos. So as you can see here, I created a really simple calendar and I used my gold watercolor to add some celestial details around the headers and also to paint a variety of plants and little sprigs and some stars around my two moths. And I've outlined the moths the same way I did the moth on the cover page and let that ink dry so that I can go back in with my gouache and add that color. I'm continuing to use the same color palette, though moths can come in a bunch of different colors just because I want the theme to be cohesive, but I am trying to fill them in slightly different ways and use different combinations of colors or create different patterns so that each moth is still unique. For my habit tracker this month, I'm tracking 6 separate habits, all of which have been represented in one or both of my habit trackers over the last couple months. It's funny because I really fell out of using habit trackers for a long time. I just felt like they didn't work for me and I wasn't using them. They were kind of a waste of time. But since I've moved, I've really been utilizing my habit trackers a lot more. So I'm having fun with them for now, but of course, whenever they stop working for me, I'm going to stop using them. So now I'm moving on to painting the tabs for my weeklies. And again, I'm just using those same colors that I used to paint the moths to keep everything consistent. So just continuing on here with the tabs, painting that first one, the nice light peachy beige, and then the next tab is going to be just a little bit darker, so more into a bit of a light orange color. For the tabs, because I'm painting a slightly larger area and trying to get a consistent flat color, I'm adding a bit of white gouache to the lighter colors just to give them a bit more of a consistent opaque finish, just because I find when I'm lightening gouache just by adding more water, sometimes you can get a bit of an uneven finish, just like you do with watercolor, where it can be hard to go over the whole thing evenly and you can end up with some darker areas and some lighter areas. So adding a little bit of zinc white gouache into the colors helps just give that little bit more opacity, especially when I'm trying to lighten up the shade. Once the tabs were fully dry, I started setting up my weeklies. So just showing you the first one here, and this is week 35. So I'm just splitting each page into 2 sections so I can have a full half page vertically for each day of the week for daily tasks, events, writing out my timeline, checklists, all that stuff. And then the final section is my weekly task list for any repeated tasks or tasks that don't fit on a specific day. So this is my rolling weekly spread, specifically the Faux Dutch Door rolling weekly. And as always, I'll link my video explaining how to set it up and how to use it, why I like to use it, in the cards and in the description box down below, so you can check it out if you've never seen this type of weekly before. Once I finish my weeklies, I'm flipping to the final spread of this setup, which is going to be another quote page on the left side and a final piece of art on the right side. So for this final quote, I chose, "Being uncomfortable is a sign of transformation." Again, felt very relevant to a theme about moths, who are obviously known for transforming from a caterpillar into their adult form, but also, again, just for this time in my life specifically and in the world, it just feels resonant and relevant, and other words that start with R and end with T. So moving over to my final piece of art, and I'm starting with inking in the details yet again. This is a male moth with feathery antennae and just a bit of a fuzzier moth altogether. Once I have my inking done, I'm going to be adding some gold to this spread as well. So creating some circles, dots, and stars on a vertical line, as well as 2 mostly symmetrical branches coming off underneath this circle with the moth. I also felt the quote page looked a little empty, so I decided to go in and add some stars around it. Now that everything's dry, I can go in and add the color to my moth, again using those same colors, just in slightly different ways for some variety. And that's it for my September setup. So before I show you the full flip through, I want to talk to you for a second about today's video sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creators like you and me. Learn new skills, explore existing passions, and just get lost in creativity. There are a plethora of class topics available on Skillshare, including illustration, fine art, graphic design, and productivity. Skillshare is curated specifically for learning, meaning there are no ads to distract you from staying focused. The class I'm currently taking is Watercolor in the Woods, A Beginner's Guide to Painting the Natural World by Rosalie Hatzlet. And this is a great class for those of you who are looking for a beginner's or entry-level class about watercolor. I get a lot of questions from all of you about how I got started with watercolor and gouache, whether I have tips or recommendations for ways for you to get started. And I started by taking classes on Skillshare, so I highly recommend you do the same, and this class is a great place to start. Rosalie goes through all of the basics you need to know, what materials you need, how to take reference photos, sketching, preparing your palette, different methods of painting, how to layer, creating texture. There are so many nuggets of wisdom throughout this class, and even though I've been painting regularly for a couple years now, I still was learning new things watching this class. For any of you who want to take this class or any of their many other incredible ones, the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a free trial of premium membership so you can explore your creativity. Thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and with that, let's hop over to the flip through and see how this whole setup turned out. I really love the color scheme of this setup. As y'all know, I love a good warm autumnal color palette, and that's very much what this feels like for me. I also had a lot of fun learning about moths and looking at a bunch of different reference photos. There are so many different species of moths and they all look so different. No two moth species are alike, and I feel like that is part of the fun, that two people could do a moth theme and the moths could look completely different. I also really like the quotes I chose this month. Again, I just really resonate with them, and I feel like they're really going to help me maintain a good mindset through this period. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you to my patrons for your support. Extra special thanks to our newest patrons: Kayla, Jamie, Rusmaya, Jennifer, Meg, Moendley, Emily, Michelle, Courtney, and Claire. Welcome all of you to the squad. We are so excited to have you. If you at home want to join the squad, feel free. There's a link in the card and in the description box down below. And with that, I'm going to get going. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you really soon in my next one. Bye, friends. Don't forget to check out my last video, which was all about the reasons why people quit their bullet journals. I did a lot of research, and the video is a bit of a labor of love, and it seems like it's really resonating with a lot of you. So if you missed it, you can check it out here.